Good evening, everyone, and welcome to BT's Fly Tying Friday. Tonight, the 27th of December, we're going to be showing you some humpies. Maybe you've never seen them before. There'll be slight variations. And on the weekly tip, Michael Paradas and I will be doing some split thread loops based on inspiration from Barry Webster. Anyway, we're the BTs from Boise, Idaho. And as I said, we're going to be doing some humpies tonight. Ones that one made it into the book and the other one didn't. And this is our Humpy book. If you want it, you can get it from us or Amazon. It costs about 20 bucks. But right there, btsflyfishing.com, if you go there, you can download a free copy of it. As long as you don't mind working off of a PDF, you can get the book free. But if you want to have a paper copy, you'll have to get it from us or Amazon. But for tonight, we're getting ready to move into some humpies that maybe you haven't seen before. And we'll start tonight. How would you like to start with a roadmap fly?
I'm just real excited.
You want the roadmap fly then, huh?
I want the roadmap fly. This is a little guy. I struggled with him today, and I'll talk about it as we go through. But this is a fly that I've made. Let's put up the pattern with black thread, and I've done the tails and the wings with makeup brush. And the body is actually, he says yellow yarn, but it's actually crochet thread, or not crochet, embroidery thread, and a foam strip, grizzly brown hackle, and black thread for the head. So let's get started, and we'll talk about the issues that I had as I went through. This is not a fly that I have tied a lot. So as I go through, I'll kind of describe the issues that I had and what I found out I was doing right and what I tried to do that messed me up and how I corrected it. And
the inspiration for this comes from all the way from Australia. Our buddy Paul told us about tying flies with a substitute moose hair. Well, what is a substitute moose hair? Well, when Gretchen goes to the materials, she's going to share with you that substitute moose hair. In fact, you want to go to the materials now?
Yeah, I've tied with this brush before as the tail, but this time I used it also for the wings.
Up under the camera.
And we also have a brown brush, and I'll talk about that as I start tying. Here's my embroidery thread, my whip finish, some hackle thread. And I have my stacker here just in case I mess up the fibers, and then I can put them in there and straighten them back up again. I'm going to tie this today in a size 10. Now, I cut I started out with my foam at about 1/4 of an inch, and that was too big. So here's an eighth of an inch. And I cut this, I have a rotary cutter that I use for sewing, but I also use it for cutting this, and it's the best way to cut.
Sure does a good job, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And then I've also got, a cutting board that has marks on it and a straight edge. So that works really good. So we'll start off with hook in the vise. Let's see, here's my hook.
Okay, you ready to go to the vise?
Yeah, I'm ready to go to the vise.
Okay.
This is the material or the makeup brush that I use. And it is a very shiny, kind of a little slick. There are some other brushes that aren't quite this slick, and so I found this one a little difficult to work with. The brown one, I used it. It's in that top drawer there. Let's show that.
Yeah, here you go.
And it's very similar, a little longer fibers.
Hold it up so they can see it.
But what I did today was I tried to combine the two. And what happened when I combined the two, it caused me to put too many fibers in the tail and the wings. So I'm just going to use the brown or the black. Start off with a base wrap. One of the problems with a humpy is that you tend to crowd it. So because of that, I kind of force myself to do things towards the bend more than I would normally. But that causes me actually to end up with stuff. And the reason is the bending of material. And when you bend material, it pushes it forward when you're bending it back up this way. So, and then also you have to bring down that big chunk of foam, and that causes a lot of materials right here. So start your base wrap. I don't know if I explained that very well, but just trust me. Start your base wrap at about the 1/2 point. So we're going to start off with a tail. Now, the other thing that I did incorrectly today is I just kept putting too much of this material on. And because it doesn't compress and because it's very slick, I just kept having a mess. It kept sliding off. It was horrible. And I thought, what am I doing wrong? And suddenly it dawned on me that I was taking too much material. It's a lot like calf tail. If you take too much of it, you are in trouble. So this is going to be a fairly sparse amount. I'm going to use for the tail. When you cut it off, generally speaking, it's pretty nicely level. All of the tips are
Notice there's
even.
no waste that you have to get rid of either.
No, and there's no waste. So we'll just measure this from the bend to just behind the eye. We'll set it in place. I want to tie that on a little. I'll tell you why I did that in a minute here. So I'll remeasure this, set it in place. It's really important to keep the material towards you on this side because thread torque really affects this. In addition, I'm going to do some folding wraps, as we call them, which are pretty soft. Clear back here. And then I'll ratchet down on it a bit. Now, the reason I didn't start tying it on clear as here is because I need some space to cause a nice gentle slope. Because it doesn't compress, you can end up with big humps in here where you tie things off. So I just kind of like to mess around with this a little bit. And as you can see there, I think I've got a nice slope. Now, if I were going to fish with this fly, I would probably put some glue on it. As you can see, it's already slipped a little bit on me. That is the trickiest part I found tying with this stuff. There, I've got it better. So let's ratchet it down real hard. I don't know, Paul, if you have trouble with that when you're tying with these brushes, but I really struggled today keeping the material up on the hook. This is about where I want my wings set. So I'm going to tie them with the tips forward. Now remember, when you fold them back up, you're going to have that fold and it's going to push you forward. So let's take a wrap back. Measure it. Set it in place. Remember to do a finger thumb tuck. By the way, I have tried, see that roll? Boy, I have tried the method of wrapping around it and pulling it down, but for some reason, I do that all the time with hair, but for some reason with this stuff, it just did not work for me. So I can take one more wrap there, I think. I think I'm pretty well up on top. Now I'm going to come back from behind and get a severe angle on this as I can. I'm going to flip some of them back shorter. Tie this down real tight here. And there again, you might be wise with this to put just some glue on there. The other thing you could do would be a little dubbing wax, perhaps. I'm not going to set this wing, or divide these wings. Let me check these. They're okay. I'm not going to divide these wings until I get the hump on and tied back down. Earlier today, I tried dividing the wings at this point, and then it made it very difficult to put the hump on. So we're not going to do that. It works better if you do this first. So here's my foam, and I'm going to cut a nice little angle, pointy point. Now, this is where I have to decide. I want to think about my proportions very seriously here. I want that hump to be tied down about here. So I want to tie it on a little back from that. So let's take a wrap, tie it on about here. Now, this is where you have to be really careful because it's so easy to mess that tail up. So notice I took a wrap, an easy wrap, and then pulled up on it. And that keeps the thread torque from pulling that tail over. This is my embroidery thread. And it's actually got about 6 strands. So I'm going to cut some off. And I want about 3 strands. So if you just play this out a little bit. I actually think I ended up with 4, but that's fine. Tie it down. So work my way back. And then I'll start wrapping this, and I'm going to wrap it back and then forward. Because I want a little bulk for the body, because one of the things you want is for the body to show along the side. And if the body is too slender on any humpy, it's hard to get it to show.
And while you're wrapping that, Neil asked, does the makeup hair float? And in fact, it does. And then Paul made the comment, like Gretchen was saying, he puts a drop of Sally Hansen's on to kind of keep things from slipping around.
Well, I'm glad, Paul, it wasn't just me. I don't know, today it just seemed to really be slippery. You know, I came a little too far with that. I was listening to the comments. I'm going to back that off just a little bit. I have to have room for my hackle. Now, something else I discovered is it's kind of hard to trim this after you tie it down. So what I started doing was measuring it, cutting it off, and then tying it down. Let's see, I think I've got that a little long. I wanted to make sure I hadn't pushed my wings too far forward. And there we've got the hump. Now's the time to divide the wings. It's a little more difficult to divide than hair for some reason. I need just a little bit more there. Okay. And also because it's slippery, you have to be really careful and be sure to take 2 wraps or it will slip out really easy. So gentle, 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 just like you do with poly yarn. Those wings are a little canted forward more than I like them. So let's take a couple more gentle wraps, and then I can pull it back. Come on, buddy. There we go. That's a little better. Look at this guy. Yep. There we go. I like the set of that better. Okay, now I'm going to put my base wrap there, get my hackle. Strip this hackle down a little bit. I'm going to do just, let's see, I got to make sure I've got this right. Here we go. This side, I'm going to take just a few more off one side. Cut that. And I think I'm going to start this one back here ways. So we'll get rid of that. It was a little soft on that far end. Clear stem showing there. That one's a little bit long. Come forward. And we'll wrap our hackle. You guys, so I had to get rid of. And the whip finish.
Well, that stuff may slip and slide around a little bit, but that certainly makes a good looking fly, doesn't it?
Yeah, you know, working with it, I must have tied what, 3 flies this afternoon.
Yeah, that was your first 3 with that stuff on this kind of application.
Yeah, and I have to say, just tying 3, I got a little more accustomed to it, and I think I did a little better job with it. And you just do not want to have too much of it, because then you are in big trouble.
Any questions for Gretch?
That's it. That went faster than I thought it was going to be.
We were wondering about that today. Well, you can chat with Gretchen for a minute. And in fact, what I'm going to do while I'm setting up, I'm going to be transferring Gretchen's stuff, and we'll move chairs around and everything. But I wanted to comment about something from last week. And that is our friend Lou Duncan pointed out that the fly, The Occasion, was actually published in Gary's book, Trout Flies. And that book was published in 1983 by Gray Cliff Publishing. And while I lay this stuff out here and get rid of the different items here, I got hackle and, thread. You guys all know what the heck this stuff looks like. Set my glasses over here. And, but Gray Cliff, does any of you know where the Gray Cliff Publishing came from? Well, actually, it was Gary's company, and he named it after a fishing access on the Madison River that he and I both fished very often. And I'll set that aside. And the area for Gray Cliff was the first fishing access south of the road that came straight out of Bozeman. It was what is it? The one that went
93? No.
Because anyway, it was straight west of Bozeman, in the lower Madison, where it comes out of the Bear Trap. And Gary's favorite float was from what us guides call the outhouses, straight west of Bozeman down to Gray Cliff. That was the next access down. And that's why he named his publishing company Gray Cliff Publishing. Just a little bit of something that really makes zero difference to anybody. But
when you're floating that section of the Madison, As you look to your left, there's cliffs all along there, and there are climbers out there all the time climbing those cliffs.
Yeah, it's that's the Gray Cliffs that they're talking about. If you want to go to the Vice camera, Gretchen,
Oh,
I'll start
certainly.
getting some materials laid over.
So I have to get to work, huh?
Yeah. And that's the fly that I'm going to be tying. I call it the West Yellowstone Humpy. And just getting some material set from the materials area over at the Vice. And I'll explain to you a little bit. Come back to this book on page 32. And it's chapter 3A, West Yellowstone Humpy. And back in the day when I learned about this fly, let's see, it was in the early 80s. I'm not sure the exact date, but it's the same year that Jimmy Carter came to the conclave. And so I was at the conclave, and the big buzz around town that Jimmy Carter was in for the conclave. And that was kind of a fun thing. So it was the early 80s. And at that time, getting hackle for dry flies was an absolute pain. We'll leave it at that. And most of it was from India, and most of it was not very good. And I happened to run across this guy tying out in front of the Bob Jacqueline's fly shop, which was right straight across the street from the conclave, sitting there at a card table tying flies on the sidewalk. And he was tying this fly. And I said, "Why are you tying it the way that you did, the way you are?" He says, "Well, I can put less hackle on and I'll still get good flotation." Well, I've never seen this anywhere but my fly box and on the sidewalk in West Yellowstone. So it's not one of the things that showed up all over the area, but you'll see why you can get by with less hackle here in just a minute. But I'll set that aside. And let's go back over to the Vice. And I want you to notice that we've got a hump right up here. I'll swap glasses and get my close-up glasses on. And you can see right there, what we've done is we've got a hump there. It provides some flotation at the front, which allows you to put on less hackle and still get the same flotation on the fly. I thought it was a really cool idea that this guy had come up with. And so I started using it on my own flies. But you know what? I could not give it to a fly shop. They just didn't want anything to do with it. So anyway, never did become popular. It's one of those great ideas that just didn't work, except in my own Vice or on my own fly fishing. But anyway, I'm going to put a number 12 hook in the Vice.
While you're doing that, just let me break in a minute.
Yeah.
Aaron, yes, that material is synthetic nylon, I believe.
Yeah.
Those brushes.
Oh, you're talking about those brushes?
Yeah.
Yeah, that it's it looks like mousse, but it's a synthetic, very slippery stuff. Makes an absolutely gorgeous tail once you learn to work with the idiosyncrasies that it brings to the table. Anyway, I am going to start by just putting a couple of turns of floss, red floss. And you know, one of the things I forgot to do was to go over the recipe. Maybe I better do that.
Is that number 2?
Number 2 recipe, yeah. Got West Yellowstone Humpy. I'm using a dry fly hook. It goes sizes 8 to 22. Most of the time I don't tie this one over any smaller than an 18. It's difficult to do the next step that we're going to be doing here, or the first part of the fly on anything smaller. I'm using red thread, but it's anything a humpy can be tied in, you know, green, yellow, all the colors. I'm going to use mousse for the tail, and the body is thread. The hump is elk hair, or you can use deer or some other, but I'm using elk. The wings are elk. The hackle is grizzly or whatever you want. I think I'm using brown tonight because that's what I got. And the head is waste from the tail. And that's what I'm getting ready to do right now. So let's go back over to the materials area, and I'm going to get some of this mousse. And I selected this piece of mousse because it's a good, like all mousse, it's good stiff material, but it's a little longer than some of it. and you'll see why I need it to be a little bit longer. Doesn't make any difference when you get down in sizes 16s and 18s, but in this particular one, it needs to be a little bit longer. And I can see right now that I got a couple of bad ones in there, which means I don't have enough hair. I'll get over here and get just a little bit more hair and add it to the bundle that I've got here. And get over here now. Yeah, that's going to work better. All right. I'll just slip this into my hair stacker. And I like to push them in backwards and get the stacker ready to go. Okay, that's all nicely lined up. Got one bad hair fiber there. I'll get rid of it. And I'll measure my tail for length, which is equal to the length of the hook shank. I'll set it in just like that, down on the hook, and I'm going to tie it on though right behind the eye. And I'll just bind it to the hook all the way to the back. And that gets me, I caught the hook right there. I'll wrap back over that. There, I got that floss off the point of the hook. And I'm going to wrap back forward to right back from the front of the fly. And this is where I'm just going to pull over the hair, the waist from the hump, to put a nice additional bit of flotation right at the front of the fly. We trim that off. There we go. Good. Now I'm going to wrap back to the center of the hook. And whenever you tie this particular style of a humpy, and this is one that's in one of the chapters early on in the book, where you do everything out of one bundle of hair.
You need to check your tail. It's off to the side.
It's off to the side. That sure is. Thank you, Gretch. Okay, good.
That's better.
I'll bind that. Okay. Now I'm going to get back over here to the materials area and get a bundle of elk hair. And I need long enough hair on this because it's going to fold over and make the hump and the wings. Rather than using two bundles, I'm going to do it all with one. Let's get over here and I'll work the waist out of this. And you can see what I'm doing is I'm getting that waist worked out of the hair. Now let me slip over to the waist bin and I'll get rid of that right now rather than try to get rid of all that waist cover, getting it all over my camera and lens and everything. Okay, there we go. Put it in the stacker. Again, backwards. That's the way I like to do it. And that stacks it up pretty even. And now I want you to notice that I've got some short ones that are just not going to quite do the job. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab a hold of this bundle out on the very butt ends and pull out all that short stuff. Just another way of getting rid of the stuff that you don't want. Okay, now here is the only place in the fold over type of humpy that is really critical, and it's the measurement that I'm going to make now. And that is, you want a bundle of hair twice as long as the tail. Well, the tail is already equal to the hook shank, and of course it's equal to itself. So what you do is you take this bundle of hair and line it right up with the end of the tail, hold it in place, and reach up and cut that even with the front of the hook. Well, I'm going to nick it a little bit because I don't want hair flying all over the place, and I'm going to move off camera and cut the rest of that hair off so that I don't end up with hair all over my lens. And now I've got that all cut off the way I want, and I'm going to tie that to the hook in the center of the hook. And right there, whoops. There we go. Now I'm just going to start working my way to the back of the hook. Really cinch up there, and now I'm going to gently wrap over the rest of that so I don't compress all the flotation out of the hollow part of that hair. Just tighten up so it isn't going to slip around, but it will also maintain its flotation abilities. Now I'll get back here to where I want those wings to be, and I want the wings to land right in the middle of this open area, if you will. So I'm just going to pull the hair over, and one of the hard truths about tying with hair, whenever you pull it over, whether it's bullet heads, humpies, or anytime you fold it back over itself, it is impossible. Listen again, it's impossible to pull it tight. Keyword pull. You have to pull it into place, and then you take your finger at the back and you push forward like I'm doing right there, and that will bring it tight. I want you to watch now carefully as I hold it with my right hand and start dressing and pushing with my left so that I get those hair fibers all lined up and still, come on you, there we go, and still get that, still make that into a nice tight head, a nice tight hump. Now I'm going to take a couple of turns over that, and before I tighten it up, I'm going to let up on it and then cinch back down. What that does is places all of the hair right up on top of the hook. And I kind of jam the hair and the tail over to the side there. I'll just push that back. And now I'm going to switch from floss to my red thread. And I'll just reach back over here real quick and grab that red thread. I have a 6/0 thread that I'm just going to tie in place here. There we go. Trim that off. And now it's time to divide my wings. I'll just fan those out a bit. Notice that it's a lot easier to work with this at this stage of the game than it was with that really stiff stuff that Gretchen was working with, because it'll kind of stay in place. You pull it off to the side like I just did, and it gives you an opportunity to actually look and see if you're getting it divided. With the stuff that Gretchen had, it was so stiff that using it for wings is difficult because it tries to go back to its original shape. All right. All I'm doing now is wrapping around each wing post a little bit. Now that I've got them both captured, I'll just bundle the hair, as I call it. Let me swing this up so you can see better. There you go. You can see what I'm doing is I'm just using softer wraps to pull that wing bundle together. Now notice that wing bundle, and then compare it to that one. This one that I haven't done on the near side is a little bit spread out yet. Well, I'm just going to gather that bundle right now, and now I'll crisscross between them so that I have both bundles of hair gathered about the same. Hey, thanks for that close-up, Gretch. That's good. Thank you. Anyway, back over to the materials area. I'll grab my hackle and bring that over here and just pull one out that's a nice long one. I'll use it. I'll just lay that right there while I put everything else back into the clip. Spent too long gathering all that hackle and getting it sized to drop it in the waste bin and lose it. What I'm going to do now is strip this off, and then I'll strip a little bit more on one side than on the other side. And that's just so that I can make that first turn, have all the fibers lay really nice when I make that first turn. Now here's what makes this really nice. Back in the day, when we were using India capes, if you were lucky, you could get 4 turns around a hook with 1 feather, and that's it. Almost every dry fly that I tied back in the day for sale would take a minimum of 3, sometimes 4, and even 5 feathers to get the job done. Well, with the cool thing about the West Yellowstone Humpy is all you had room for and all you did is you put on 4 turns of hackle. That's it. And well, geez, that would just about use up one one feather, and that's it, instead of 4 feathers. It was really nice, and you had as good a flotation, if not better. Why? Because you weren't supporting the whole thing with hackle. You were also supporting it with the flotation ability in the head. So I thought that was a really cool idea. Unfortunately, like a lot of ideas in fly fishing, it just didn't catch on. Anyway, so I'm going to wrap a couple of turns in front, a couple of turns in back, and I'll do a couple of turns around the thread, tie off the hackle, get my whip finish tool, pull that tight, and I will cut my thread with the edge of the scissor blade, and now I'll break off the feather just like that. Okay, good. So now we have what I call the West Yellowstone Humpy. As it's turned out, Gretchen and I got through our 2 flies a little faster than planned. Well, I have a just in case we got done too quick, all schedule here. So let me get to it. One of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to give you all an opportunity to do something that Gretchen and I have been doing for almost 30 years. And that is we pre-tie an awful lot of stuff. And we've talked about this before, doing it in steps and all that. One of the steps that we do on a lot of our hair wings is we tie a set of wings and a tail on a hook and put it aside. We're done. We've done the setup, we call it. We're just tying setups. And now that wing and tail can become a brown with grizzly, a tan with grizzly. It can be anything under the sun that you want it to be. And what we do is we tie those in a range of sizes. And I've got one here for you that we've tied in the recent past. And if you'll go over to pull this Humpy out, and here is what Gretchen and I do, thousands of them, thousands of them. And all this is we will tie through the time that we're watching, and go to the far shot. There you go. And it's kind of put together, more or less divided, still needs to be pulled into place, but you've got a tail and wings there, and we'll just tie those one after the other after the other. Sometimes even when we're just watching television, we'll sit there and tie for a while, and all we'll do is tie tails for a week. And then we'll add the wings to the tails later. Well, what I'm going to do is, maybe you don't want to do a bunch of stuff with hair and everything like we did, because we were preparing those for commercial orders that we knew would be coming in down the line. What I'm going to do, though, is offer all of you a challenge and an opportunity to do a similar thing with your fly tying. Now, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take this out of the way, and I'm going to show you how to do some setups for yourself. And I've got one partially done here. I want you to first off notice that I tied this tail material, and it's that brown brush material laying over there at your area. Would you grab that for me, sweetheart? Thank you. That brown material that Gretchen didn't mix with hers, and there it is right there. And that's what I use for the tail. Now, it isn't what I always use. I usually use mousse. But anyway, and in this particular case, I put on a piece of Antron yarn. However, poly yarn works really well, or other lightweight stuff. And I want you to notice that the first thing that I did is I tied on with crisscross wraps the wing material. Then I tied the tail material on so that it went over the wing material all the way to the back, and now I'm brought the thread forward to right behind the wings. Now I'm going to come back in front of the wings, take a couple of turns, and now I want to trim this at a severe angle so I get a nice taper towards the hook eye. And what that does is give me a nice hackle platform on which to later wrap my hackle. Okay, now I've got a setup that I could use for either a spinner or a dry fly, or if I wanted to, you'll see here in a minute how I could actually turn it into a parachute fly as well. But let's just get this work back here right now. And for now, I'm going to turn it into a standard divided wing fly. And all I'm doing is crisscross wrapping, snugging up so that I'm bringing the wings into position. And I can bring them as close together or as far apart as I want. That's up to me. Or I could pull them up straight and wrap a post around them and make a parachute. So those are the options that are waiting for you with your fly tying. But for me, I'm just going to do a standard dry fly type of an application, and I'll trim those wings to length after I get everything done. But for right now, I'm going to get some dubbing now. And I just happen to have some red dubbing here, and it goes not really great with this, but that's all right. I will also get some dubbing wax and put the wax on. And we'll just touch dub some dubbing on that on that wax thread. All right, and we'll just wrap this into place. And that's coming together all right. I'll just wrap towards the front and stop right there. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab one of my hackles, and I'll just use that one from last time. It's got a little bit left over, because I'm going to tie this on while I continue dubbing forward. One of the things I like to do on my personal flies is put dubbing under my hackle. I just think you get a better profile after the fly is wet. Now, I am doing a semi-Colzer style tie, which is a open wrap, and it covers the whole body. Well, I'm just doing it in the front, but I want you to notice that I am leaving little spaces between so that the red dubbing shows through. And I'll tie off my feather. Couple of turns of thread. Get the whip finish tool out. Tie that off. And I'll cut the thread. And I'll break the feather. Set that aside. And now let's adjust our wings to the length that we want. And there you got a fly to go fishing. Now I can take those wings and adjust them forward, backward. I tie them on the hook and slide them around where I want them before I put on the tail. But that's something you could be doing for yourself. And let's see if I've got it here. Don't see it.
What you looking for?
Well, I had a size 20. One of these. Let's see. Oh well, I misplaced it. I didn't know whether I was going to need it tonight or not, and I didn't do a good job keeping it here. So anyway, there you go with a dry fly.
So Mike wanted to know if the floss was single strand or what, but that is the stretchy nylon is what he used for the floss.
For the floss on the regular Humpy, it's stretchy nylon. Yes, it's and actually it's Danville nylon stretch. If you want to buy the same thing from Uni, it's called Uni Stretch, and I don't know what the other companies call it. Any other questions?
Al, I
How
happen to
did,
do that as well, only I do it with sparkle guns. And I just put one in the vise that you can see if you want to spotlight me. There we go.
Ah, there it is. Yep, there you go. Same thing, and then all you got to do is add the dubbing and posture the wing, and you've got to compare a sparkle gun, isn't it?
Yep. And I do that. I tie them in sizes I tie a lot of green drakes, but I might tie a brown drake, or I'll use, sometimes I'll use dubbing for the body. Other times I might use a biot. And so I don't know exactly what I'm going to finish it with, but the characteristics are still the same. You have a wing, and I usually use a brown Zelon for the tail.
Sure.
And I'll trim the tail to the length I want after I finish it.
Thank you for the for the feedback, and getting back to all of you. Now, I challenge you on two things that you can do with this. You can make those blanks, as John calls them, setups, whatever that you want to call them. Call them whatever you want. I would recommend that you start out and decide to make a dozen size 12, 2 dozen 14s, 3 dozen 16s, 2 dozen 18s, and you're all set. And what you're going to learn out of that, besides getting yourself set up to tie a bunch of different flies, is you are also going to learn proportions, because then you'll soon start to see that, oh, one don't look like the other. And you can make them look like the other by adjusting your proportions of materials and length. And you'll learn proportions, and plus the repetition, from the repetition of the work, sets you up for your bronze, your silver, or your gold, should you decide to go through that with the Fly Fishers International Awards program. But anyway, any other questions?
Well, Bill wants to know what knot you use when you tie it off and then go on to the next fly in production method. And do the materials impact where you stop and then go to the next fly?
Hey, Al, this is Bill. What I mean is, like, let's say are you using a half hitch or using whips to hold the materials in place, and then you cut the thread and then you go to the next one. Does the type of material and how easy it slips dictate whether you're tying it off with a whip or a half hitch or whatever?
When you have a half done fly or the setup fly, or the whatever you call it,
Yes,
whatever makes you happy. Half hitch is what we usually use, because that's all it's going to do is get anchored in place when we actually finish the fly.
this is Terry. I have a question.
Sure.
The most difficult part of the fly, because I tie a lot of soft tackles that have a quill body in 3 or 4 different sizes. And the hardest part is getting the quill body on there. So do you recommend I just tie all the different sizes with whatever quill body color I'm using, and then set them all aside, and then add the rest of this soft tackle piece to it, which is usually cartridge or something? Is that I'm looking for a shortcut, basically, to getting a whole bunch of them done.
There's several shortcuts, and without just looking at your particular pattern, you may just tie several things on, including the material to be wrapped later when you're ready, adding the other stuff. And
I think the point too is, Sherry, for us when we're commercially tying, if you can cut down the amount of materials you're using, you can do it faster. So what that means is you're if you tie on those quills, quill after quill after quill after quill, you're only just using a few number of materials, and you can do it a lot faster. And you kind of get into a routine and you really get fast. And then the same thing when you finish the fly.
That makes good sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of think that's what you're
and not every fly has the same break-off point, but we don't anymore. But in the day when we were making our living out of all fly tying, we would do thousands of these ahead of time, just taken around so that we'd have many of them available when an order would come in. We didn't have to dig out materials and tail and wings and everything. We'd look and see, oh, well, we already know we have 100 dozen size 14 dry fly setups waiting for us.
We did that with a lot of the parachutes that were made with
Yeah, we did.
calf tail.
Yeah, we did parachute calf tails, and we did the one you just saw, which is the calf tail with a deer hair tail. And
How do you store them?
in a box.
How do you?
I mean, in a box for size.
Little
so they don't get
boxes.
messed up.
But you could also use these little things too. This would work, Sherry.
Oh, the little cups, and you mark them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just label them as to what they are. It's pretty obvious what they are. They're a not completed fly that has a tail and wings, as an example, or a parachute post and a tail, or whatever.
I had a little. Another thing you could use would be like a little divided plano like this. And you could, that way you could put in several different sizes.
Okay.
And in fact, that's a box of setup.
There it is.
So we understand.
My gosh.
We're not talking about 2 or 3.
No. How many do you think is in there?
I don't know, probably 50 dozen.
Oh my gosh.
And that's sometimes when I'm kind of stressed and I just want to do something easy, I'll get a box of those out and just finish them. Then I put them over here in our little thing, and that's a lot of what we use for giveaways and stuff.
Now, today, it's the giveaway stuff. Back in the day, it was when orders came in, we were able to respond to the customer a lot faster because we did some of the work through the summer and the fall and when we were just watching television or whatever.
I did a lot of
interesting. I wanted to stress what Al had said earlier on proportions. If you do that technique, you will be amazed at how consistent your proportions will be. And for a certain technique that you're trying to do, for me, as it was the sparkle den wings, I can tie them much faster just tying the wings rather than the complete fly and then go back. But you will be amazed at how you can actually speed up your fly time.
Yeah, I'll second that. I did it when I was working on my bronze, and it was absolutely amazing how much better I got by tying the same thing over and over and over again, and then going on to the next step. And I thank Al and Gretchen for that, because I watched them do that on one of their original or early Facebook production scenes. So.
Yeah, we recommend when you're working on your award program that you tie in steps, and you do maybe if you need 3 of them, start out with 6. Tie 6 tails and 6 wings or whatever, and then by the time you get done, you're going to have 3 that you really like.
Oh, that's good.
Or if it takes a dozen for you to get 3 that you really like, when you're going for the bronze, silver, gold, you may find that you have to take a few more. Whatever works out for you, I guess, is the best thing.
For me, it was close to two dozen of each fly before I finally found 1 or 2 that I liked.
Oh, well, as you can see, when I held the box up, it takes 50 dozen for us. Anyway.
Well, this was really good. That's a good lesson. I like it.
Okay. Well, anything else before we go into the weekly tip?
Amy coming to Jim Ferguson suggests making setups ahead when practicing the bronze, and silver,
Tonight, we're going to have 2 of us doing the weekly tip. We're going to have Michael Paradas and myself. Okay, and Michael's got a hook already in the vise, and it's there on screen and everything. And Michael is going to demonstrate something that absolutely. Michael sent me a video in the recent past showing his method of freehand splitting the thread for a dubbing loop. And I said, Jesus, that's great. I've got to work it in somewhere along for our weekly tip. And then about a week ago, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, I forget. Anyway, Barry Webster reminded me when he used the SM Allen dubbing loop splitter that that would be a good thing to share. And then I have a different splitter from a different organization. Well, as it turns out, Michael volunteered to help out with this. And Michael, I am going to I'm going to put you with a complete spotlight and let you take over from here and talk about splitting the thread.
Okay, great. For for a long, long time, when I wanted to split thread, I would flatten the thread and stab at it with my bodkin and miss it about 10 times before hitting it once. What I came onto was getting the thread onto my thumbnail, and I guess you could use any nice hard surface, but with my thumbnail, I could take and aim right at it and split the thread very easily. And I was happy. I was really happy with that for probably about 3 months, and then this came on the market. I don't know how you pronounce that, but it's Smaheen thread splitter, and it is just so damn slick. You can flatten your thread, come in behind it, and give it a little pop, and it's split. Or you can come in from the front and give it a little pop, and it splits the thread. And fooling around with this thing, I was able to flatten and split uni A-dot, which you're not supposed to be able to do.
Oh, wow.
And that's the end of my story. I love this little tool. It's great.
That's great. Now I've got something to share with you, and I have something very similar. And I'll just put this hook in the vise. I've already got the thread attached to it, and like you, just got thread here so that I can. Now the one that I've got, if you'll go to the number 3 camera, Gretchen, and I want you to notice that this particular device has got a little bend on the base end, and there's a sharp point on the other end. Well, the bent down section tells me where a little catchy knob is located, and it's on the downside or it's on the upside, whichever way you use it. But I'm going to use it on the downside, and I just place it over my hand like this, and then I'm going to slide it over the thread, and it does the same thing that the Sman does.
Would you
Sman
do
one
that
does.
again? Your hand was kind of in the way.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
There you go.
Yeah.
Al, could you show a close-up of the end of that thing?
I'll try to. It's can you get tight on that, Gretch?
Well, that's going to be tough, isn't it?
You can see the
Oh, I
little
see
knob
it.
there.
Yeah, I see
Little
it.
burr.
It's
Yeah, it's got a little
tough to-
dot knob there.
tough to hold it there, but
We
Just
can
a
see
little
it.
Just
bump.
peened over.
Kind of thing.
That's a little
and
peened
that's
area.
it. And that is called the Daniel Wilmer. What the heck? I have it written down here. Daniel Wilmer splice needle. And this was sent to me by Jan Aben in the Netherlands. And I believe this Daniel Wilmer is his son-in-law. Anyway, his son-in-law has a fly shop in Germany, and he sells these. And I think he's the one that they developed at least this particular one, quite some time ago. But anyway, there's a weekly tip.
Al, this is Michael.
Yes, Mike.
Yeah, spotlight me again for a second. I'll show the tip on the Smaheen, or however you say it.
Oh, okay. Just a sec. Different glasses.
Yeah, it's Schmein. It's Dutch.
Schmein?
Come on. Very close to German.
Replace spotlight. There you are, Michael.
Okay. Let me get in close here.
Yeah, I can see where it's got a little ridge there to grab it.
Yeah, it's got a little, it's round on the end and then it's got that little step
Yep.
that grabs the thread.
And so you pull that up against the thing, the
Yeah,
thread?
just pull it up against the thread and it grabs it.
All right. Cool.
This is what we've been talking about, and my challenge to all of you is to come up with the way this is tied. Now, I'm pretty sure I've got it all figured out, but I'm waiting to see what some of you have got available. Now, one of the things that I found really interesting is Jim Ferguson sent me his version of a mystery fly crossed up with Charlie Craven's Banshee. Now, the Banshee is in the lower right corner, Jim Ferguson's is on the left, and so he's got basically a mystery fly with a Banshee head on it. It's wild. It's even wilder than the other. And what I would like to do now is, Jim, you've got one in the vise.
Yeah, this is the Craven's called it a screaming banshee, which basically is a skittering caddis. And there's a couple ways of tying it. You can change the body color, like that's got a little mirror flash down there for the body. And the first thing you do is you put some deer hair along here out the front, and then you tie in some deer hair to the rear and let it stick out back there. And then you do your mirror body, and then you can do a little thorax, and then you put your deer hair on like a wing going back over the top, and then you bring that stuff up the back and split that hair and tie it down and have the butt stick out a little bit in the front, but it splits this wing out to the sides. So it sits flat on the water.
And that's
Now,
not too.
that's Craven's Screaming Banshee. And so what I did was I took the same idea. It was a mayfly body. And so what I did was instead of using, I took a bristle brush like this, paintbrush.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get a bristle brush, you'll notice that the tips are split, which helps it stay in the water. And so that's for my tailing, and I put only 2 tails on it. And then I used a biot body. And the problem was with the size of hook I had, the biot body didn't really go all the way up. And I kind of cheated a little bit. I've got 2 biots on there. And then I thought, well, that's an awful skinny body. I probably should have put an underbody on it so that it would be a little bit fatter up where it joins the the thorax area. And I noticed that on the mystery fly that that was shown us back here. Let me back off a little bit. I had noticed that this section back here was one size and up front a larger. Well, this looks like it's kind of just evenly graded, but on a mayfly, they quite often have the front main wing, and then they have those little smaller aft wings. Tied another one today using a smaller hook. And you can see the split ends on the tail there. And that's from the split ends are from the boar bristle brush. So, and they're split on a paintbrush so that it makes a nice smooth appearance to your paint job. But it also helps when this fly is in the film, it keeps it from punching through the film. Those little fibers at the end, they help support the fly in the film. And then I used it's got a buyout body, and I did an underbody of kapok, which is a floating material used in the old brand of life preservers. And then I tied in definitely a section of shorter, and this is elk, shorter length, tied it in up here, and then I tied in the longer ones right over it. And then I had already tied in that, in this case, I actually used, again, some of the, originally I put some of the elk up front, and then I had tied in right here at the base of the back of the wing, I had tied in some antron, pulled it forward, tied it off up right in here. And now I can see where I've got the rear wing and the front wing. I found too that when you're using that healthy hook, a little trick you might try to remember, if you have a blob on the end like that, and you want to get, if you can drop it on, but if you leave the adapter on it, it spreads out and into the material rather than blobbing up on top.
It's sharing on BT's Fly Tying Friday. And this is where you all share with us and the world watching in. I'm going to start tonight because of an email that I got along with a picture from Roberto Brenda in Italy. And he sent me a picture of his mayfly.
Well, that's pretty.
And he says it's tied on a dry fly number 20 hook, and he calls it the pink mayfly. And I'm going to read this to you exactly as it came on his email. The abdomen in extended body is assembled with various yarns using a wooden frame. As yarns, I use oval silk floss intertwined with nylon from 0.16 millimeters to 0.25 millimeters, variously colored. Tails in natural and synthetic fibers, microfibets. Shaped wings in natural feather or cartine. Thorax in kapok, dyed in various shades, which acts as a base for 3 or 4 turns of hackle, always in various shades depending on the imitation to be made. And the imitative level that is obtained is remarkable, and it is possible to reproduce many species of insects by playing with colors and sizes. Have you heard that before? It's something Gretchen and I are talking about all the time. But anyway, that's from Roberto Brenda in Italy.
As you know, Paul Fidelis is big on Norvices, right?
Yeah.
I finally bought one of these, one of the bobbins from them. But when it did, it came with a whole bunch of spare of these here.
Right.
Well, I said, how am I going to store those? Because here's what they look like. They're just rings.
Hold it up a little higher.
Oh, there you go. See, they're
Okay,
just rings.
yeah.
So I said, well, how am I going to store these? So what I came up with is, said, I know. I'll put them in medicine bottles. And that works just fine.
Works really good. All right.
And at our age, we have lots of medicine bottles.
Yeah, so do we.
John,
Yeah,
this is
for sure,
Dr.
for sure.
I got this idea from Gary Begley. You know, the clothes dryer static strips that you put on in the dryer, and he uses it to clean the inside of your coffee grinder from stuff that gets caught in there. That was his idea. And my thought too is if you don't have any static guard, you're just rubbing your fingers on this stuff and it's pretty much as static guard.
Same, yep, exactly.
Now, hey, Paul, if you got a plastic, like I'm on a plastic mat, I just take one of those and I rub it on the plastic mat and I don't have as much static electricity or across the silicone mat. And that does help.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. Oh,
How I store my disc.
you have a few spools there, Paul, all for the Norvise.
I bought them when they were cheaper. It's a lot more expensive now.
Yeah. Okay, that's it for tonight, folks. Thanks so much for joining us this couple of days after Christmas 2024. Until next time, we'll see you next year.